Hello, and welcome to a short vox from Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and for the next few weeks we'll be covering the Siege of Medusa.
Now last week we discussed the origins of Medusa V, along with the Schism of Medusa IV, which took place in 750.M41. And since then, those that were deemed clean of chaos by the Inquisition were integrated into Medusa V, and the planet began to produce the much-needed Promethean fuels and sturdy metals the Imperium needed for its vast fleets. In fact, for the next 2 centuries, Medusa V continued to thrive as the gateway through Van Gross rapidity, resupplying convoy vessels and exporting millions of tons of precious strategic ores to the ever-hungry Imperial Navy and the Adeptus Mechanicus. Only in the past few years have events begun to accelerate, casting the safety of Medusa V into doubt. The rapidity had begun to boil over, a phenomenon that has left even the wisest of the Imperium savants and observators baffled. Initially, the change in the nearby warp rift was not deemed to be of concern, but soon there was little doubt that its instability was growing at an unexpectedly rapid rate. The rapidity began to expand through space at a terrifying speed, and every outpost and way station the warp storm touched was lost. All signs of life completely eradicated. Adeptus Mechanicus vessels attempting to monitor the storm calculated that in only a few months it would reach Medusa V. The best minds of the Imperium agreed on a single fact: all the people of Medusa V would die. Even as the Imperial forces in the region attempted to come to terms with the onrushing tide of destruction from the warp and plan the evacuation of Medusa V, more sinister events were unfolding. The Tau watercast arrived on the world, seeking to carry on diplomatic negotiations as they sought to lay claim to the world, desiring to use it as a base from which to penetrate the secrets of the warp. Unrest boiled on to the surface of the planet, mirroring the hideous warp storm that was approaching it. Several of the cities that contained the descendants of the refugees from Medusa IV openly revolted against the world's imperial authorities. Imperial Governor Lord Solomon, the world's ruler, hoped that this was an emotional reaction to the dire threat approaching his planet. But with every passing day, news of the rebellion grew worse. The attendant tech priests of the Mechanicum, who operated the vast aspect arrays in the orbital space docks above the planet, detected a series of astronomical energy spikes. The first had originated on Medusa VII, a blasted and lifeless planet that had previously been dismissed as completely unremarkable by the Imperium. A second and third new energy signature were then detected on Medusa V itself, one in the uninhabited southern region of the planet and the other on the outskirts of Macavius Hive, the second largest population center on the world. Rumors soon abound that alien invaders were laying siege to the city, alien invaders who matched the description of the feared xenos known as the Necrons, indicating that perhaps Medusa VII had been one of their tomb worlds. Awakened from their long hibernation by the proximity of the warp storm, the Necrons had sought out the closest populated world to begin one of their genocidal red harvests of all intelligent life they could find. 3 vessels, part of the Mechanicus exploratory fleet, heading further into the eastern fringes, were then attacked under mysterious circumstances, within surveyor range of Medusa V's Imperial Navy picket fleet. Several frigates were dispatched to assist, but the Imperial warships arrived to find the vessels were nothing more than drifting hulks, all crew and passengers lost, with no sign of the attackers. The Dark Eldar was suspected, and believed to be moving deeper into the Medusa systems in search of a good fight. As if matters were not bad enough, more than 100 farming colonies on the northern edge of Medusa V's settled continent were destroyed in a spat of barbaric attacks by an orc warg that had been drawn to the mining world by the growing conflicts being fought on its surface. All of the farming machinery was looted, and not even the great reaping machines were left behind by the attackers, as only smoldering ruins and scattered corpses of the farmers remained. In reaction to these attacks, the remaining farmers began to abandon their settlements for fear of similar assaults. Every day, more agri-laborers abandoned their communities, and the threat of famine on a global scale for the people of Medusa V became more of a reality. Death Watch Space Marines of the Inquisition's Ordo Xenos, tasked with eliminating the remaining splinters of the Tyranid Hive Fleet Kraken, warned that a sizable surviving portion of the Hive Fleet had broken its course following a titanic engagement with the Imperial Navy at Lycanis. Librarian Andreas of the Death Watch postulated that the vastly swollen rapidity might be acting as a beacon to the hive mind of the Tyranids, drawing the vile creatures towards it. The best efforts of the Ordo Xenos to turn the Tyranids aside amounted to naught, and a full-scale invasion of those rapacious aliens soon added to the utter insanity that was reigning on Medusa V, as the world approached its own apocalypse. Yes, it was not a good time to be living on Medusa V. The populace of the doomed planet became very popular, and not in a good way. Normally, the Empire of Man had enough problems dealing with one Xenos race showing up on their planet, but this was just about all of them. Not only that, but it seemed that chaos was rearing its ugly head yet again. Yet, when things seem the darkest, hope rears its light-filled head, casting the shadows back into the darkness. With events quickly spiraling way out of his control, Governor Solomon turned to the Imperium's Sector Command, who brought the matter before the Inquisition. The Ordos immediately dispatched an entire cell of Inquisitors to investigate matters on Medusa V. They arrived some weeks after the governor's request to find that Hive Aurelius, the capital city of Medusa V, had already erupted into civil war, with the governor's personal guard and the Adeptus Arbites desperately fending off the rebels. Now openly claiming allegiance to Chaos gods, vast swaths of the planet's population rose in defiance of the Imperium, and rumors that the terrible traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines were directing their efforts filled every loyal heart with despair. The Inquisition wasted no time in making a wider call for aid, before the planet was consumed by the war raging across its surface. Captain Cato Sicarius of the Ultramarines chapter was the first to answer the Inquisition's call to arms, bringing the mighty Second Company of the Ultramarines to the Medusa system once more. Dozens more Space Marine chapters offered support, sending their forces racing for the planet before it was too late. An Imperial Guard crusade, led by Lord Marshal Graf Herazon of the Vestorian Firstborn Regiment, was also launched towards the world, as regiments were raised to meet the new threat or diverted from other campaigns into the Ultima Segmentum by the Segmentum Command. With every passing day, the cataclysmic warp storm of the rapidity grew closer to Medusa V. Governor Solomon reported to the Inquisition that the forces of disorder, chaos, and foul Xenos grew bolder and stronger, pushing back the scattered Imperial defenders as they waited assistance. In the end, there was no doubt that the days of Medusa V were numbered. The warp storm would scour the planet clean of whatever life still remained on its surface when it arrived, even if the Emperor's many enemies on the world did not accomplish that task first. But the Imperium of Man would not abandon this world's people to the forces of darkness without a fight, for a single day's production on Medusa V was well worth the sacrifice in manpower. As drop pods and landing craft blazed their trails across the burning skies of Medusa V, the planet was consumed in a titanic, multifaceted conflict between the Imperium, the forces of chaos, the Tyranids, and Ork-Borg, the Necrons, the Eldari, the Drukhari, and the Fire Warriors of the Tau Empire, whose Earth caste had secretly maintained a series of scientific installations dedicated to probing the Imperium across the world. Hooey! This is going to be a scrap for the history books. But where to start? Well, this week we'll be looking into the Tau, who seem to have shown up first, followed by the Dark Necrons. And next week we will be going over the Tyranids, Eldari, Drukhari, and the Green Guys. And the week after that we will conclude with Chaos and Humanity. Now, for the Tau, they actually had hidden scientific research facilities on Medusa V, and the scientific engineers of the Tau Earthcast strove to unlock the secret of warp travel. See, the greatest hurdle in the Tau's rapid expansion across the galaxy has always been their lack of knowledge of the warp, and from their vantage point on Medusa V's Raffaello's spine, they were striving to reverse this inadequacy. Etheric scanner arrays, pointing at Van Groth's rapidity, were harvesting massive amounts of data, intended to unlock the mysteries of the warp for the Tau. Though the Imperial forces of Medusa V did not know it, the Tau had established a chain of similar scientific facilities across the entire planet, eagerly penetrating the secrets of the warp. To protect them, the Firecast hunter cadres were secreted around these installations, heavily armed and highly trained warriors of the Tau Empire, willing to sacrifice their lives for the information their Earthcast counterparts were gathering as the warp storm neared. When the Imperium discovered the true intentions of the Tau and their hunger for the secret of the warp, There was no doubt that it would turn its full might against them. To prevent this, before the Medusa V conflict, the Tau had feigned diplomatic negotiations as a ruse to distract the already beleaguered humans, claiming settlement rights on the world and testing the patience of the Imperium to its limits, in an effort to delay the onset of war. Aunt Piel, the ethereal assigned to oversee Tau operations on Medusa V, knew full well that this deception would go unnoticed for only so long. His forces stood ready to take the war to the Guella, and any other who stood in the way of the glorious destiny of the Tau Empire. Every battle won by the Tau forces on Medusa V purchased the precious time necessary for the Earth-cast scientists to complete their research of the warp anomaly. Now, the Necrons, on the other hand, had always been in the Medusa system. They were just dormant, waiting for their protocols to wake them. And so they had remained asleep in the Medusa system for the past 60 million years. The seemingly lifeless world of Medusa VII, unknown to the Imperium, was a Necron tomb world. There, deep below the surface, the slumbering form of a Necron lord long dwelt in suspended unlife. Known to the Eldar as the Herald of the Storm. In times now forgotten, this Necron lord was one of the original architects of the Star God's great work, and foremost amongst the Necron servants of the Catan. When the warp storm threatened the Medusa system, the time of arising had come once more, and the Necron's robotic tomb spiders awakened the malice of the Necrontyr to feast upon the souls of the living once more. On Medusa V, Tech Priest Aspect Arrays detected the initial energy surges that were the harbinger of the Necron invasion. In the wastelands beyond the towering spires of Macavius Hive, storm clouds gathered, crackling with eldritch energy that defied all sensor interrogations. Beneath the wings of this storm, phalanx upon phalanx of Necron warriors marched at the direction of their lord, overwhelming the outlying defenses of the Hive at ease. Captain Sicarius of the Ultramarines, newly arrived on planet, ordered several units of his company to Hive Macavius, alongside the Vestorian 27th Imperial Regiment Guard. By the time the Hive itself was embraced by the storm and all communications became possible, its defenders had rallied against the threat before them. The Necrons were only too aware of the incoming warp storm, and so they devised a strategy to turn it to their advantage. The Imperial defenders of Hive Macavius remained unaware that the true thrust of the Necron advance on Medusa V lay not before their walls, but in the chill wastes of the Telosian desert. It was there that a legion of robotic conneptic scarabs and conneptic spiders labored unceasingly to build monolithic structures that could hold the warp at bay, fueled by the harvested essence of those who had fallen before the assault on Hive Macavius. If these monoliths could be fabricated in large enough numbers, they would generate a null shield that would shelter the entire planet of Medusa V from the fury of the warp once it was activated. If the Necrons succeeded in their plans, they would be free to harvest the souls of the human population of Medusa V at their leisure, while the warp storm harmlessly scoured the rest of the Medusa system around them. Each Necron victory assured that the tomb spiders would complete the null shield, allowing the Storm Lord and his warriors to harvest the souls of the people of Medusa V for the Catan at will. Now, I must mention here that while the leader of the Necrons is known as the Herald of the Storm and the Storm Lord, I have found no connection to Emotech, who is also known as the Storm Lord. Upon further inspection, the name happens to be the same, and these two Necron warlords are two different Necrons and not the same person. Well, folks, that's all the time I've got for today. But what happened to the Tau and the Necrons, you might ask? Well, after I explain everyone's tactical schemes and marching orders, I will give said answer in a grand finale. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this Vox. If you did, please like, follow, comment, and subscribe. And if you really enjoyed the show, feel free to support us on Spotify or join our membership program on our YouTube channel called
Tales of Asharaka.
Have a great day. And as always,
Until next time, this is Zeckthar, signing off.